Welcome to Level with Emily Reese. This episode features a chat with composer Zac Tiessen for a StarCraft 2 mod called UED First Light. StarCraft 2 came out in 2010. It's a real-time strategy, sci-fi, space, military management situation game. The first StarCraft came out in 1998, and this mod, UED First Light, aims to explain events that happened before the first StarCraft even happened, like 250 years before the first StarCraft. So this is a prequel mod, I guess, is how I would think of it. Zac Tiessen, the composer, is primarily a guitar player, and the developer asked him to please make guitar a texture of the music, which is epic orchestral, to match this giant space game. And so he plays guitar in there, which is great, added into the texture, and also a vocal soloist, which was Julie Elvin, who you may have heard if you played either Horizon game, Forbidden West or Zero Dawn, as well as I think she has lent her vocal talents to League of Legends and World of Warcraft. So she's in the video game scene as well, and she sings on this StarCraft mod, UED First Light. A couple of things. Please join us on Discord. You'll find a link down in the show notes, and it does not cost you to become a part of our Discord server. So hop on in the conversation, talk to us about games and music and whatever pets you have at home, whatever positive things you'd like to share in the Discord. We welcome that. And yes, find the link down in the show notes. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss our newest postings. We're also working on getting our back catalog up onto YouTube. One important thing though about this video, there will not be music in this video. We only put that in the audio version of the podcast. So even though this video is great because Zac shows off his custom 7-string guitar, which is very cool, and the instrument that he's built. So there's really cool reasons to watch the video aside from hearing the music, but you'll need to listen to the audio version to hear the music from this StarCraft mod, and it's great and well worth listening to. So, what else do I need to ask? Please do become a patron if you're able to, if you're financially able to. Send us a bit of support. We would be grateful for it. And in any event, let's get back to UED First Light. Here's Zac Tiessen.
StarCraft 2 obviously is like one of the OG real-time strategy games. And I was approached by this producer in Texas randomly in December saying, we're doing like this 5-year mod project, like we're like nearing the end. Would you be interested in doing music for it? And at the time I was like, oh, okay, what's StarCraft? Like, I'm not like a huge gamer, but okay. I have grown up playing games like Madden was like my favorite game, NFL. Nice. And I looked it up. I'm like, oh, wow, this is like a Blizzard game and like OG crowd and fan base, and like the Reddit's still active. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay, this is really cool. And like sci-fi sounds he wanted, and like epic action and like percussion synth guitar. So I was like, wow, this is like the perfect fit for like what I love doing. And so UED First Light is the name of the mod, and it kind of follows the one kind of tail off story of the Brood War, I think it is. And okay. They go into different kind of fleshing out of that storyline. So lots of different moods and sounds that I was asked to create. So yeah, it was really a neat opportunity that just worked out perfectly.
Yeah. Now, when you said you were approached by a producer in Texas, were you in Texas?
No, I was just like
the producer is, because you're from Canada, right? You live in Toronto. Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny. Okay. I was actually the night before I was talking to one of my friends at like just like a Christmas like get together gathering thing, and it's like snowing outside here and right in Toronto, and I like we're literally talking like, oh, I wonder what I'll be up to next year, right? And then like next morning I see that this email had come in at like 1 a.m. and then I'm like, okay, that's what I'll be doing next year. So yeah, it took 4 months to like compose and produce. I got two really good session musicians, Yoed Nir, who's a cellist from Israel, and he's played with like Regina Spektor and done a bunch of like Conan and Late Night with James Corden, like really amazing cellist. So I'd worked with him previously. He does all of kind of the string enhancements. So like I'll compose the string parts and he'll then double it with his takes. And then the producer, Eli, he was like, oh, it'd be really neat if we got vocals, because I was writing choirs and vocals in the mock-ups, but he's like, what if we got a solo voice? And I was like, oh, I've never done that before. Cool. I was like, let me research some vocalists. And the one that caught my eye was Julie Alvin, who had just been on the Horizon Forbidden West soundtrack, and she's like done League of Legends. She's like definitely one of the best out there. So I was like, oh, I'll see if she's not busy and see if she's game to do this. And she was. So I was like really excited to work with her, and she was so nice. And so she did, she sang on about half the tracks and was just kind of doubling the lead melody, and it really kind of gave it like an enhancement that definitely wasn't possible without her. So yeah,
I love what she adds to the texture in the main theme, especially. So talk about constructing the main theme. Was that what you did first, or did that come later? Well, clearly it must have come first, because it's peppered throughout so much of the score. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you noticed that. Yeah, because when it came to the theme, Eli was like, okay, let's do a 3-minute track and see if we can really get the heart and soul of the game in this track, like in terms of different motifs and just overall instrumentation. And I was like, oh man, like I really have to nail this if we're going to go ahead with this whole project. And I sent it to him literally on Christmas Eve day. I had pulled an all-nighter because I'm like, I have to get it to him before Christmas, because I said I would. And so I sent it to him, and I didn't check my phone for like 2 days because I just wanted to enjoy time with family. And and he, all I see is like, he's like, Zach, this is literally perfect. It was in like C minor, which was the key he was thinking. It was the right tempo. Like it was just like perfect fit. And I was like, oh wow, that was like really, really great. Cause from there it was like, okay, we know we're on the same page. And it really all spawned from like a simple guitar melody. You can kind of hear it fluctuating in the like Supernova, the main suite, in the first minute, like just kind of underneath the melody. And that kind of inspired like the chord progressions and harmonies. And then I wrote the melody over top of that. And really when it came to establishing all of the pepperings, as you said, throughout the score, it really came back to every single little motif. I tried to, do about 4 or 5 things in the main track that I could pull from, and, either slow down. Like that's a technique I really like doing is, so there's diminution, which is like shortening, but then there's rarefaction, which is like lengthening a phrase by double. So I do that a lot in the other songs, where I'll like take one of the melodies and stretch it and flip it to the bass. And it's a lot of different reworkings, but it definitely kind of comes back to that initial sweep.
Yeah. And as I said, I really enjoyed that the main theme. It was in my head all morning. Which is good, right? Awesome. I mean, ideally. So then that's how you became a part of the team and all that stuff. And and the guitar I really liked as well. And it turns out that's your main instrument. So we'll talk about, or I don't know actually if it's your main instrument, but we will talk about that more in a bit. But so it was the producer's idea to add guitar initially. That's kind of what he wanted, or how did? That's awesome.
It was like basically Eli. He goes also by like the Oracle online. Like he's really big in the StarCraft community. So
sweet.
I should mention that if you want to look up the YouTube page, look up the Oracle, and you can find everything about UED First Light there.
Oh, cool, yeah. Okay.
When it comes to kind of like doing guitar and things that I like doing, and he was really on board with that because he'd actually found me through Epic Music World's YouTube channel. So I have always like kind of sprinkled in guitar in my soundtracks because that is like my main instrument. So I went to Berklee for that, and for performance. And then I also went to UCLA for film scoring, and learned through one of my favorite video game composers, actually, Nima Fakrara from Detroit Become Human. So he really inspired me with the synths. And so I kind of got into that more too in the last year. And so yeah, when Eli was like, hey, can kind of you do your sound from like Agnes Day he'd heard, and Rise Up's another one of my tracks he'd liked. So yeah, it's really cool to have someone that likes your music and also was wanting to reference some of the music that I really like Last of Us and Hans Zimmer and Junkie XL's score for Man of Steel was another one. So yeah, we're definitely on the same page with kind of the sounds we like. So the guitar riffs really kind of would dictate some of those themes, and doubling sometimes either with piano or strings. So
okay. So how old were you when you started playing guitar?
I was 13 when I started playing. So there's a whole backstory. I've done other interviews about this, but long story short, I had a really bad concussion at 13, and it kind of changed my personality. And that's when I got into music and literally started playing guitar 2 weeks after that. And I'd never been into music before that. So it was pretty interesting, like how that started. Yeah. So my progression with music, like I like playing obviously like fast stuff initially, like metal, and kind of have like a progressive rock and jazz background. So I'd been into like interesting time signatures and harmonies. And as I was growing in my music appreciation, I really got into orchestral music. And I think I was actually playing Madden NFL when I heard Time Heist, I think it's called, by Zach Hemsey. And it was like on like the main title thing. I was like, whoa, like that sounds really cool. And then that was used on the Inception trailer. And then I got into Inception. So that was kind of my first intro to being like, wow, like, and you can use guitar like right with Inception kind of as a main thing in that sound. So yeah, those were kind of the initial things that got me into to film scoring and video game scoring. Yeah.
It was are there other musical members in your family?
No, actually. Yeah, both my parents were teachers and professors, and my brother's a fine artist. So he's like a painter and very creative that way. So, but cool. Yeah, no one else. So it's kind of interesting how I kind of found it myself.
Yeah. Oh, wow. How about that? Well, let's go ahead and you said you studied guitar at Berklee. So I'm always curious because guitar is so, I mean, it just can really play any style, anywhere, right? I mean, there's guitar-like instruments all around the world and all the things. So did you focus then on kind of the jazz prog rock thing when you were at Berklee then, musically, performance-wise?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like late teens, I was heavy into doing that style. My professor, Tim Miller, was a big influence on me with the jazz. Also, Alan Holdsworth, like great jazz player, like super kind of like alien scales. So you can maybe hear that seep in through this soundtrack a bit, like really crazy modes. And then during that time, I also got into specifically playing H-string guitar. So that's
like Charlie Hunter.
Yeah, Charlie Hunter. And then also there's this progressive metal band, Animals as Leaders. So I learned from them at like a camp at 15. And then I opened up for them actually at 17. It's like that was like my first show.
Oh, wow.
And so I was playing with them a year later. But as my kind of interests and style changed, I kind of moved away from that genre gradually, and kind of saw that those basis of time signatures and kind of textures and stuff could be kind of applied maybe to this orchestral sound. So that's kind of something that I really like to blend and feel like guitar's definitely becoming more popular, I think, in scores lately. Like you hear the latest Thor movie, like it's like crazy, like shred stuff. And so, yeah, I think it's turned out really well that I play guitar. I've definitely benefited from having that background. So I always feel bad
amazing.
because it's like, I reflect on like other video game composers, like you look at maybe someone like an Austin Wintory who's like conducting in high school and stuff, and I think, oh, I maybe should have started earlier. But everyone has their own unique path, and
of course,
and influences, and I definitely the best piece of influence I personally received was from a guy I know really well and have actually kind of started assisting, Andrew Lockington. He's a film composer for like Rampage, San Andreas, and he's like, Zach, like, don't feel like you have to learn piano to become a composer. Like you can write things from your guitar, and that will seep into like your melodies, and like that's what makes you unique, and that will kind of be your sonic uniqueness, I think. And so when I heard that, I felt like, oh, if I need to get into film composing, like I need to relearn everything on piano. But it wasn't the case, and I've really benefited from that advice. I think it's maybe something that someone else out there can also hear with a different primary instrument than piano that can really kind of lend to unique voices, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, just I think classically trained musicians tend to have opinions about musicians who don't read music, or like you're saying, composers who don't play piano, or everybody, like vocalists who whatever, and I think largely that even classically trained musicians can wrap their head around the fact that someone can have a really special talent that should be shared with the world, no matter how they got it or how they maintain it or anything. It's just like it is what it is. I remember when I was in grad school studying music theory, and I can play piano, but it is not good, and it is not my main instrument. Like I can't sit down and sight read. I used to be able to when I was much younger, but I just could not anymore by the time I was in my 30s. And like I was, encouraged to take piano lessons and like really hone my piano skills, because if you want to be a theory teacher, and yes, there's definitely truth to that, but I mean, it's interesting. It's like, doesn't all have to be centered around piano, people.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though I love it, like it's honest to God one of my favorite instruments. But that's the other thing too, Zach. And I don't mean to keep talking, but it's like you're a musician. You can walk up to a piano and play a melody on a piano, whether you know how to play it or not, right?
Totally.
That's the beauty of the piano. So I don't know.
And I think maybe my parents wanted me to play like instruments growing up, but like piano was always one of those instruments that I was so uninterested in, because it to me it always just kind of sounded the same. And if you listen to like my soundtrack, you're going to hear like, okay, there's a lot of like textures, and if someone were to ask me to just like write a theme on a piano, that's kind of like the least intuitive thing that I can do. I definitely do like you're saying, I can sometimes like noodle, and actually will occasionally come up with a melody, but just like a whole orchestration like just on piano isn't as intuitive. But over the years, like the last 5 years, I've been playing piano, and I now actually have a piano just to do some sounds with it. I definitely see the benefit of kind of knowing your way and being like, oh, okay, this is like chromatic median, to like things like that get a lot more easily for visual kind of seeing where you're going. But definitely don't have to play piano to be a composer.
Definitely do not. Funny. So back to the soundtrack for UED First Light. I loved New Dawn, and it's such a short little piece, but it's just lovely, So I'm curious, is that like a specific cutscene that's happening there, or what's the deal with New Dawn?
Yeah. So when it came to like composing all the pieces, I should say, they're all mood based. So it was an interesting process with Eli, that it wasn't so much matching it to an exact level even, or cutscene, he gave me a list of moods that he wanted.
Neat.
And he's like, can we make, 3 action type moods? Can we make, 2 villainous moods? Can we make a couple like tense holdout, like not quite full throttle, but holdout kind of action? So for that one, New Dawn, it's part of like Orion and New Dawn being kind of the revelatory awe moods he wanted. And in that case, it's kind of plays as this one major cutscene in the game. And that was just kind of based off of trying to create a sense of, revealing. And interesting that you like that one. Julie's favorite one is that one as well, because it just kind of dynamically lifted, and like she just totally nailed that melody, and it's so beautiful, and has kind of a similar sound to the previous track before it. Fight for Justice also uses this Ionian sharp 5 mode, like a harmonic minor, so it kind of has that like almost for lack of a better term, like Dune sound. It's interesting, when I was writing this, I actually hadn't heard the Dune soundtrack. It was just like such a funny coincidence that that it like came out. It kind of had the same sci-fi, sci-fi does have that kind of augmented lift to it. So but yeah, I really like that track as well.
Yeah, it's a good one. Psionic Presence is fun. I loved all the like portamento, glissando-y kind of sounds in there. Just really how it shifts and kind of keeps you off your feet. Yeah, that one was a really fun one to do, because like I think that one was like maybe the 3rd track I did. Interestingly enough, like they're definitely not in order, but basically with that track, I was trying to nail down like how far can we go without it sounding like a different soundtrack, but like really interesting in horror, because Eli wanted to definitely kind of horror style, like ambient stuff. So I really experimented like with some kind of like Bram sounds, like on my Moog synthesizers. I like patched together some weird noise inputs and stuff to kind of double the brass. And actually, fun fact, Yoa did all the strings on all the tracks except Psionic Presence and Into the Void. I decided to play the cello myself on that track, because I'm like, I want it to sound like kind of janky. So like I would double the portamento there with the brass. So, and then I like quadruple tracked it, so it was like, the intonation isn't that great for a player like me. So, but I actually like that, because it's like super kind of off. So it definitely lent itself to that more uneasy sound. So yeah. Definitely very effective. I always used to joke that like the best horror soundtrack would be recorded by like a middle school band. Like that would be the best. Or maybe a middle school orchestra, even worse, probably. Yeah. Oh, that's hilarious. But yeah, no, I really liked that. And then I'm glad you mentioned Into the Void, because that it sounds so far away, right? Which is cool. I love that. It's almost like kind of drew me in and made me want to like turn it up, because I thought that was really neat effect. Cool.
Thanks. Yeah, like that one, I wanted a lot of almost a bit of like noise in it. How I achieved that was it was really hard to record, and the way to kind of give it that distance, it was like a EBO that's usually used on a guitar. Like it's an infinite sustain, kind of almost like acts like a cello bow sound. But I put that on the piano that I have out here, and I left the sustain pedal on. And if you get it in a certain range, it almost sounds kind of like a whale song. And so I just had this kind of like one note, but it barely resonates it. So it's like very soft. So like the noise floor kind of comes up, but it's this interesting sound in context that it's like, where are we at here? Like, this is like, what's going on? And then another sound in that one that I used that was kind of interesting was, and also a couple other songs, was a like orchestral bass drum. And I actually took like an afternoon to sample one at like a local church that I know. They're doing like this epic rendition of Little Drummer Boy for like their Christmas concert. And
Nice.
I said, like, can I get in there and just like sample these one afternoon? So I took like 3 or 4 hours like to deep sample it. Like I did like hands, actually. I did soft mallet, hard mallet, back front. So lots of options, loops. So for that one, I think that may have been like a soft mallet again at the back, giving it that distance, then putting it through some reverb. And yeah, so it has this kind of reverberant thing. And then on the other tracks for that same drum, I would use the hands, but then I just filter out all the bottom end, and it almost actually kind of sounds like this percussive kind of top end, like shaker thing. So yeah, you can hear that on a couple of outros of certain tracks.
Yeah, and it is a very percussive soundtrack. Like there's a lot of like, you know, kind of military-esque drumming and stuff like that. So so was a lot of that sampled, or did you like that you sampled, or just the bass drum, or Yeah,
it was some samples. Like there's also I'm really big on a ride stick, like a ride cymbal. That's kind of not as much of a utilized instrument. I think that comes maybe from my jazz background, that I almost want to like approach percussion like it's this one big drum kit. Like there's obviously the sound of like an actual drummer, and that's kind of cool, but I want to actually treat like the timpani like the kick, and then like the snare, and then I actually used a hi-hat as well. It was interesting, a few years ago during lockdown, actually, I sampled this tom set called Lockdown Toms in this old church with my friend had a studio there at the time. And so I did this deep sampled of like rolls, but we sampled it so that the right side of the room was its own tom, and then the left side was its own tom. So you have this back and forth thing. You can do those kind of rhythms. So like, again, if you have like the timp in the center, then you have those wide. And then he also like sampled the regular kit, and I used that sample of the hi-hat from that. So cool. You have, you know, this left, you know, ride, tom, center, timp, so and then the bass drum. So it's kind of this interesting foray of percussion. And then obviously I wanted to make it militaristic and some kind of interesting loop, distorted, like degrading sounds. So yeah, I didn't want it just to be like a snare or military drum, but like some also interesting kind of ensemble.
Cool. Yeah. So I think we'll come back to the soundtrack in a moment, but you know, you mentioned that you grew up, you gamed and stuff, but you know, Madden and you said you weren't really a gamer. So is that true still? Do you just occasionally game, or just not really, or?
Yeah, I've definitely got a greater appreciation for games lately, especially since taking like the video game course with Nima Fakrara. And like that, actually specifically that game, Detroit Become Human, was really what got me into gaming again, because I realized wow, like these video games, the music is so interesting, and that soundtrack is so interesting, like with the 3 composers and how just the story arcs are, I think, a lot more complex than just like a 1.5 hour film, where you have these engaging things that are going on. So yeah, I got into gaming in the last few years. Last of Us, I like the first one, I really like. That's one of my favorites. And another one was Journey. So I have a PS3, so I'm like playing through all these older like 2010 like OG like best of kind of right now. So that, and I just got the Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim, so I'm gonna play that one next. So I'm playing all these things that I hear the music now. I'm like, I should play that game. So yeah, I definitely and specifically actually I'll play through the game, but then I'll go back in terms of a design sense for the programming and the integration, and I'll actually mute everything else. So I'll do a second playthrough of just the music and see like, okay, where are things at, and try to get inspiration for placement and looping and stuff like that. So
cool. Yeah. I was just at a gathering last night talking about Skyrim. We were talking about Skyrim and how just how many hours we've all put into Skyrim throughout the course of our lives, because it did come out 11 years ago, right? So yeah, because I played it on the PS3, I played it on Xbox, and then I played it on PS4. So I played it.
Wow.
Yeah. It's crazy. Cool, and cool. I'm sure I'll go back to it again someday. It's just, it's such a special
That's
experience.
The thing. Yeah. Certain games are very, very special. So yeah, I've been definitely enjoying those. Yeah.
Oh, good. Very exciting. And then also with regards to your composition, how has your foray into gaming affected your composition at large? What do you think that you've taken from the gaming world that you've applied to your other composition projects?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I think naturally, I didn't realize until my first soundtrack came out, Streams in the Wasteland, which was like a collaborative project with my brother, my fine artist brother, Josh Tiessen. He exhibits all over North America, LA, New York, Miami. And we decided in the pandemic to do this project together where I would score his 17 paintings and put a soundtrack for each and kind of approach it like it's its own mini movie. So then when that came out last summer, it was surprisingly really received over the past year, like really well. And on Spotify, more and more, I saw like my tracks ending up on video game playlists, and like that's how I actually found out about Skyrim. And I'm like, oh, like this is really great music. And so naturally, I think I started realizing, okay, like, yeah, maybe my style is closer to video games than I thought, because for me, like, my songwriting production background that I have, I really like things, in a repetitive order, like groups of 8 and stuff, and kind of doing this gradual like building. That's another thing that like Eli really liked about my tracks Agnes Day and Rides Up from that album is that it kind of has that intensity layering. So that's kind of a natural thing that I've been doing compositionally for a while. And so then I realized that like, okay, this is a really good fit because I can kind of approach it like I've naturally been composing for that. With film, now I think in terms of maybe my takeaway, I actually said this to my classmates at UCLA not even 2 years ago, that I don't think a theme should ever be used more than 3 times. and then when I played Journey, I like ate my words hard because I'm like, oh dear, like you can use a theme more than 3 times and it can sound like really good. Because at the time we were discussing like the Justice League movie, and we're like, okay, like, is this good? Like, what are our thoughts? And like the consensus was like, oh, we think maybe some of the themes were too overused. And I was like one of those people saying, yeah, like it should have had more variation. And with the video game world, it's really interesting how, listening to more video game soundtracks, that I think the reason they're so much more integrated and like take a long lasting effect on the player is because they've been immersed in the world. And then it's the subtle like referencing, like, whereas usually movies are like, okay, we're going to bang you over the head with like, here's the theme, like brass fanfare, right? So whereas I think definitely going forward, I like this new approach of, implied themes, or that's why I love like a movie like The Joker, that it's not so much like, here's the main theme. It's like these little motifs and almost like textural callbacks. It's textural callbacks. It's harmony callbacks. It doesn't always have to be just like a simple way of like dictating to your audience what you should be feeling. It's kind of implied things it's more creative, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I do want to acknowledge that my neighbor just turned on their leaf blower, so that's happening right now. Just in case there's a little bleed from that. But you were talking about, how your compositions are layered, And one of the other tracks I really loved was called Strength in Numbers, because of all the hemiola you're layering in there. You have like 3 against 4 against 5 against, which is very cool. So just fun. So talk to me about that track.
I'm so glad like when like people that know music like notice those things. That brings me such joy, because it's not the average listener, certainly. So that one was actually really tricky to compose, and some of those songs like Strength in Numbers and Fight for Justice was another one where they kind of like shift. They like, you think they're starting one way, and then they kind of like you sweep the rug out and take the rug out from underneath you, and you're like, okay, whoa. So that was really goofy how I actually had to, in Pro Tools, like compose in like the 1.5 speed or whatever to like readjust it, because I think in Pro Tools like the duplet or something wasn't sounding right. So that was really interesting to try to create those sense of movement. And I should also say, being an indie mod game, like it's not like they have this huge, implementation team. So I was tasked with trying to make things move and feel dynamic and interactive, but without like a full gaming Fmod or Wise system in there. Sure. So and getting the loops to kind of feel interesting. So I wanted things to feel dynamic and changing, and also like a thing that I did a lot was also filtering, opening the filter gradually on starts of tracks, and like strings. If you go back, like most tracks, they kind of do a gradual opening just to, again, get that sense of movement, where, maybe a game like Detroit Become Human would have a game engine that would do that if, you press like the right trigger to analyze like the scene or whatever, and then it does like a filter effect. So I was kind of trying to think that way, but incorporate it musically. So
such a neat track. The other thing that I was thinking about with regards to you being a guitar player is how many tools you have at your disposal in terms of like pedals and just things you can connect your guitar up to make random sounds. So when you were talking about the EBow, I was like, well, of course the EBow, but it's like, that's so cool. How many racks of pedals do you have to do this?
Like way too many. Actually, I have like an extra dozen here that don't even make it on my board. Like I have 20 on my board, and then I have to like change out which ones I don't want for each one. But it's always changing, and I kind of like having this setup where I can just randomly decide what I want to do each day and what sounds I can create. I don't know if you can see too, there's an instrument behind me there.
Oh yeah. What is that?
Yeah, it's an instrument I invented called the Cylindrical Base.
Oh, and cool.
It's kind of inspired by like some other custom instrument designers like Chaz Smith, who's worked with Hans Zimmer, and Nima Fakrar, who did like this Connor guitar, and also like Charlie Clouser, like the saw composer. He does a bunch of custom instrument stuff. So seeing those guys and getting inspired. So that's 16 bass strings tuned in unison. So it's the same gauge, and it's actually like a very speed motor that I then bow with my cello bow. And so rather than you bowing it, it bows you, if that makes sense, because it's hitting,
it does.
It's hitting the bow.
Yeah.
And then that I actually have like an extra like 8-string pickup that runs to my board here. And then from there, I actually will double that with like synth pulses and ostinatos, and if I need to retune it, I can do that. But that's an instrument that I'm still learning. It originally was like intended for more maybe kind of melodic stuff, but it does kind of actually sound similar to like a waterphone, that you get a lot of these like screechy high harmonics. So you don't hear it a whole lot in this soundtrack, but I'm definitely like saving it to be like the main instrument on a future soundtrack. But I definitely can easily double it with like synth pulses and stuff, and it just kind of layers in this almost cello sound, but it's like this kind of hybrid robotic kind of pulsating things.
Oh wow, that's really cool. I am excited for whatever score you feature that on. Sounds awesome. Wow. Well, what was the other thing I was gonna bring up too with regards to guitar? I can't recall right now.
Oh yeah, like the other, like I guess I have a few guitars here, different eight string guitar. Again, I should maybe explain that basically the range of it is like a regular guitar and bass in one. So like it has the low E string of a bass, and then it just has the normal 6 strings of a guitar. So you can do both. And the nice added range with that is I can play kind of some cello stuff on it with the low end of like the EBow and into a bunch of distortion. That's like actually in Supernova, like that's what you hear in the chorus. Like you just hear this like wall of sound. And then another thing that I do on there is, you've probably seen it on social media a bunch lately. It's called a Picasso bow. And it has, it's like just a shorter bow, and you can stick that into a sound hole. And so I have an electric classical guitar that I run through my pedal board, and I'll bow that. So that was like used on Into the Void, and I also used like an electric pickup on the cello and Into the Void through my pedals. Like I use that through a pedal called the Microcosm, which is a really cool, like it re-samples and glitches up your signal kind of and can reverse it. So I'll do a lot of that, and I have a lot of different reverb. I love reverb, as you can tell. You can probably hear a lot of different ambient sounds. So that definitely influences that. So
yeah, no, it's great. I mean, 8-string guitar is so fascinating, and I mean, my introduction to it was from Charlie Hunter. That's the first place I ever heard, and the first person I ever heard like play it like that, where you're like, "Who's the bass player? Oh wait, he's the bass player." It's kind of like listening to someone who's really good at like the Hammond B3 organ, right? Where they're playing the bass with their feet or their left hand, and you're just like, what's happening? So, I mean, because it's such a different skill set to be a bass player than like a lead guitarist. So, I mean, it's a really amazing instrument. Yeah. Like you can I definitely do some bass kind of slapping techniques and a lot of tapping as well. You can like you've maybe seen Charlie Hunter, like the bass and like the melody. The 1 string that I have is called a Canton, and actually it was co-designed and built with Rick Canton as like a signature model. So he found me at my time at Berkeley. I had done one of my professor's tracks called Night Sky by Tim Miller. And he was looking for someone that wasn't just doing the metal stuff and was doing some more interesting ambient stuff. So when he saw my video, he's like, okay, finally I can kind of work with someone on 8-string that isn't like just like a metalhead and kind of has some range. So it was a perfect fit, and we still have a great relationship today. He has some other ones he's working on, and we're brainstorming too, like way in the future of like if we could do some kind of like crazy harp guitar or something. We'll see. So what were some of the things that are special about your custom made 8-string guitar that you wouldn't necessarily find if you just bought one off the internet, you know?
Yeah. So there are a lot of great like guitar companies out there. I previously endorsed like a company from Netherlands, Aristides, they're great. Strandberg, they're great as well. Friends with them, but this Canton is unique that he has more of like the jazz luthier background, so it's voiced more kind of naturally acoustic, and I wasn't getting that as much from other 8-strings, and that it's semi-chambered, so it's very naturally resonant, and it just has a very kind of different natural sound. It's hard to explain, but just the way he makes the guitars are just very naturally sounding, like beautiful. And we went back and forth with specific scale length, and it's called a multi-scale, when basically the frets aren't just straight, but they actually gradually slant to accompany the string length. So the treble string's shorter, and then you want the bass string to be longer to have a thicker gauge and more tension. So we really played around with that, customizing the hardware. We've tried different pickups. Then I also have an interesting second output that I came up, which is for the purpose of an expression controller. I hadn't really seen that done too much on other guitars, if at all. And what that enables me to do is rather than like having a foot expression, I can actually control something from my guitar, like a reverb mix, or I've also done like tone matching in my Axis Effects here that can actually basically switch pickups with the twist of a knob. So different things like that kind of make it unique. So
now, are there videos of you playing it online, I would assume?
Yeah. If you go on my Instagram, that's like the first thing you'll see.
Oh, cool. Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah. Can you show it to us though on this video? Is it easy enough to grab and just put it in the... Okay. Oh, wow. It's beautiful. Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, that's gorgeous. Love it. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So you could probably also notice it's headless there. So that also makes it like ergonomic. Like that was one thing that I really noticed, that you can kind of play it upright and it rests on your leg, which is really nice. So
yeah. Oh, it's absolutely gorgeous. What a gorgeous instrument. Yeah. Do you name your guitars at all, or?
I do. I forget what I named that one though. I know it's been a while since I've even thought of, like, I named them and then I forget actually.
Yeah.
But I do try to initially, but I think that one is Charles II, because it was my second H string. And then that one, I think I called I think I named it Charlie, because the first song I played on it was Charlie Brown's Christmas, like Christmas Time Is Here, like the Vince Guaraldi.
Yeah.
So Charlie.
That's fantastic. I love it. Oh, cool. Well, I'll make sure and put links in all the show notes and all the places to, Instagram, and if you have YouTube stuff, whatever, I'll put links in there for everything.
Yeah, and like the UED First Light scores out now. If you just it's called Supernova Original Soundtrack. We just wanted to be careful with like the IP of Blizzard, like not to name it something the same. So because like the UED First Light is free to play, and if you go to uedfl.com, that's where you can download it and play it, and you can actually find the soundtrack there as well. If you look up just Zac Tiessen, even on Spotify, or Supernova original soundtrack, you'll find the album there. So
awesome. Great. Well, Zac, is there anything else you want to say about any of this at the moment?
I just was like so thankful to be part of this project. It was like such a great fit for kind of the sounds I'm into, and I'm looking forward to definitely diving into more video game projects. I've kind of been able to connect with more people, and it's been like the soundtrack's been received really well. Like it's really crazy some of the compliments I've gotten, saying like, oh, I like this more than the original StarCraft soundtrack, and they're like, I'm playing this other mod with Zac's soundtrack on, and like, so I was like, wow, that's really nice. So very, very grateful for the community, and Eli, the producer, super nice guy to work with. And I guess things I'll be working on this fall will be with Andrew Lockington, assisting him, the film composer, here in Toronto, and kind of continuing into the video game industry. Hopefully, I'm going to try to make it out to Mega Mix. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's in Montreal. So that's not too far from me. So I'll try to get to that one. But it was so nice connecting with you here today.
Oh, I know. I'm so glad too.
I couldn't make. I don't know if you ever go to GDC.
I do sometimes. Yes.
Yeah, I was hoping to go this year, but like I was working on this, I was finishing it, so I'm like, I'll have to go next year. But
well, and we have one. We have a tiny. Well, tiny isn't even fair because it grows every year. But we have one here in Minneapolis called. It used to be Gamers Rhapsody, VGM Con. There we go. VGM
Oh, yeah,
Con.
yeah. Yes, I've heard
which
of
is
that.
super fun. So if you ever want to come
cool.
to Minneapolis instead of going all the way to the West Coast, you'd be welcome
Yeah.
to come here in April. And then another one that I love, because there are so many good ones, another one that I love is in LA in the fall.
Okay.
It's in October, and it's called Game Sound Con. And it's like
Oh, okay.
a mini GDC for audio, right? So it's all
neat.
audio and music. And it's just this little, I mean, again, it's not little, but compared to GDC, it's just a couple of days at a hotel in downtown LA, and it's absolutely fantastic. So
cool.
I think I'm going to try and go to that this year. I haven't been since pre-pandemic, so but that's a really special con as well, because it's smaller, so it's like this really tight group of composers and audio designers and sound directors and whatever.
Neat. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out.
Directors. Yeah.
Cool.
So there's always lots of options, but yeah, GDC is amazing. I love it. And again, I haven't been there since, I mean, it was way before the pandemic. I think 2017 or 18 is maybe the last GDC I went to. So it's been a minute, because it's not cheap, right?
Yeah. You have to like pick and choose.
So you're like, okay, this year I'll do this. Yeah. But anyway.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. Like last NAMM I was at, I guess, was 2018 maybe as well, or 2019. Okay. So I'd done NAMM with my endorsement companies and stuff, but I've never been to a GDC or something like that. I'll definitely look forward to maybe running into you somewhere.
For sure. Well, and I expect we'll keep in touch with whatever projects you have coming out, and
cool.
and just what a nice surprise to get to know you and hear more about your music, and I really do enjoy the music. Really well done. So.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for being on today.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for having me.